We're looking at Sasha's Armature in the mold. The mold is made from Mold Star 30. I'm working on Sasha's arms. This is the top plate for a ball joint. It's being held in the vise on our grizzly mill. This joint is used on Sasha's elbows and wrists. It uses a single 1/4 inch ball. I'm using a 1/4 inch diameter flat mill to mill out this pocket deeper so that the 632 socket head cap screw will sit lower in the joint. If left as is, then the bolt will be too proud or tall and poke through Sasha's arm skin. This is a single ball top plate, making 2 passes, taking off 30 thousandths on each pass, reducing the height on this joint so that it fits better in the arm. This is the bottom plate for that single ball joint. I have it in the mill as well, taking off another 2 pass of 2 sets of 30 thousandths of an inch, taking it down 60 thousandths total. Here we see the original joint on the right, the shortened joint on the left. Off camera, I brazed a rod into this joint. I also need to remove material from the sides. In the past, I have milled the sides, and this time I just didn't feel like doing it, so I'm just working it down here on the stone wheel on the grinder, being careful not to harm the ball that's in there. That ball is a bearing surface, and we want that to stay nice and consistent so that the joint moves nice and consistent. Here we see the before and after. Before on the left, after on the right. And I enjoyed this so much that I made a bajillion more for the wrists on the multiple swappable hands that go into, that Sasha uses. This is Sasha's elbow joint and upper arm rod. Applying some flux. The flux is a powder suspended in water. Putting on the ball, making sure the ball is flush with the end of the rod. Using MAP gas at 3700 degrees Fahrenheit. Heating up the rod from the inside out. If I apply heat directly to the ball, then when I apply the solder, it will ride up on the surface of the ball, on that bearing surface, and I don't want that. So I'm applying heat away from the working area. I want to heat up that rod so that the heat soaks from the inside out, so that when I'm ready to apply the solder, it will flow in that joint between the pin and the ball. Just a little bit is all it takes. Once I'm confident that there's solder in there, then I go ahead and light that everything up. It doesn't glow like that in real life. The camera is showing is making the infrared heat glow. It doesn't glow like that in real life. It does glow red hot, cherry hot, but not white hot like that. Fire scale or rust looks like beautiful art. It's a mixture of the oxygen in the flame and the metals that have been oxidized. It's essentially years of rust in seconds due to the heat. Looking at the solder on the end, looks right as rain. I see solder in that joint between the ball and the pin. That looks right as rain. This will all clean up on the steel brush. Here is Sasha's upper forearm. It's a 1/4 inch, 1/4 brass bolt that's been drilled with an 1/8 inch hole all the way through. It's going to receive a pin that is an 1/8 inch rod with a 1/4 inch ball. The ball will become the elbow joint. Applying some flux, say in there. The brass is ground on a little angle so that it holds the ball away, as much away from the brass as possible. I don't want the ball all the way down around the brass. I have to have room for the top and bottom plates to be able to move freely. And then apply just a little bit, about 1/8 of an inch of solder. If I put too much, it will just go in there and pour down that hollow center, and then I have to go back and drill it out, and that's counterproductive. Letting that cool off. testing it to make sure it's set using my metal fingers. Dip it in water, make sure it's cool. And then I will use a cutoff wheel to clean up that last little bit of brass. I'm using a 1/4 20 connecting nut to use as a collar to receive a drilled and tapped set screw to hold the lower arm assembly. Many different ways to cut steel. On this one I thought I'd try the old threaded nut method and some vice grips on the cutoff wheel. This is Sasha's upper forearm. That ball is the elbow. That nut will receive the set screw. I've rotated the nut so that it's the right length, and now I need to braze it in place so that it doesn't come loose under load. Applying a little bit of flux. The brass will conduct heat 3 times faster than the steel nut, and the brass is hollow, so any heat I apply to the brass is just going to flee left and right away from my flame. In this case, I'm just going to heat that nut up as much as I can and try to get the solder to flow between the nut and the brass and not just run down the length of that bolt. It's fairly easy to keep the heat away from the ball. That ball's already been brazed, but the ball is nowhere near the 1200 degrees necessary to melt it unless I overdo it. So just be careful and don't heat up that ball. If I heat it up, it comes loose and then I have to redo it. Waiting for it to cool down, picking it up with my metal fingers, drop it off in some water. That braze looks good to me. I don't think that nut is going to go anywhere. Here is Sasha's upper forearm, putting it in the vise on the mill. Drilling a flat spot first to make sure that the spot drill has a nice flat surface to start the drill. Drilling it to receive a 1032 set screw. Drilling it with a 5/32 drill. Here is Sasha's upper forearm. I trimmed off the excess, cleaned it up on the steel brush, made a pair of them, one for each arm. Here is the lower assembly being slid into the upper forearm. The joint on the right is the wrist, putting in this 1032 set screw, making sure everything feels the way it's supposed to feel. The set screw is a 1/4 of an inch long, 250 thousandths. If left this long, it will poke through the skin of the puppet. It needs to be shortened. If I shorten the other side, then the wrench won't fit, so I shorten up the far side, taking it down to 175 thousandths. Here's the shoulder ball, the elbow joint, the hollow upper arm with its set screw, the lower arm, and the wrist joint. So that's an arm. There you go. We have a pair of those. Make sure everything fits the way it's supposed to fit and moves the way it's supposed to move. Make sure the balls have no rough spots on them. Make sure it's easy to get those wrists in and out of the upper forearm. We don't want problems on the set. And here we are attaching this arm to Sasha. At this point, before it goes any further, we need to make sure that all the socket head cap screws work the way they're supposed to work, and that all the joints move the way they're supposed to move. And we rotate the joint so that the elbow moves the way a human's elbow moves, and that all the heads are less visible from the camera.